The CEO's daughter just fired me 20 minutes before I was supposed to sign a $2.8 billion deal. I'm Andrew Sullivan, 48 years old, been in finance for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything this stupid in my life. Tell everyone it's been a pleasure working with them. The doors closed on his stunned face. As the elevator went down, my phone rang. Daniel Foster's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Andrew, where are you? We're all waiting in the lobby, ready to make history today. There's been a change of plans, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm no longer with the company. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I've been terminated. Effective immediately. Terminated on signing day? That's ridiculous. This is some kind of negotiation tactic. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. I could see Daniel standing with his team from Pinnacle Capital, phone to his ear, free hand waving around in confusion. Behind him, Ashley Martinez had come down the stairs, probably wanting to watch the big moment. No tactic, Daniel, just reality. I suggest you speak with the company's representatives about how they want to proceed. I walked out with my box of stuff. Daniel spotted me immediately and his face went from confused to alarmed. He ended the call and walked over. There he is. He clapped me on the shoulder like he was refusing to believe what I'd just told him. Ready to sign the merger? I took a breath, knowing Ashley was watching us. Afraid not. She just fired me. Deal's off. His face hardened as he turned to Ashley, who'd followed me down. You did what? Ashley's smug look shifted to confusion as Daniel's words sank in. Behind him, the entire Pinnacle team stared at her like she'd grown a second head. I was just enforcing company policy, she said, clutching the employee handbook like a shield. He violated our dress code by not wearing a suit jacket. Daniel's expression darkened. You fired the lead negotiator of a $2.8 billion merger because he wasn't wearing a jacket? Brian Martinez appeared then, rushing from the elevator with several board members behind him. Daniel, I'm sure we can sort this out. Andrew is valuable to us, and this is clearly a misunderstanding. But Daniel had already turned away, talking quietly to his team. I caught pieces, respect for their own people, and if this is how they treat their best talent. I stood there watching 3 years of my work disappear in real time. Brian came over, lowering his voice. Andrew, please, let's discuss this privately. Ashley is new. She was overzealous. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. Your daughter made a decision. You supported it by staying quiet. I accept it. Daniel turned back to us. Our agreement was with Andrew. He structured this entire deal. He understood what both companies needed. Without him, he shook his head. I'm sorry, but we're not comfortable proceeding. You can't just walk away, Brian protested. The contracts are ready. The press release is scheduled. Actually, we can, Daniel said. Page 17, Section 4 of your own agreement includes a key person clause. Andrew is specifically named. If he leaves the company before closing for any reason other than illness or death, we have the right to withdraw without penalty. I'd insisted on that clause to protect the merger if anything happened to me. Now it was going to sink the company. Andrew wrote that clause, one of our lawyers whispered to Brian. He's the only one who caught its significance during review. Daniel extended his hand to me. Andrew, when you decide what's next, call me. Talent like yours is rare. And with that, he and his team walked out, leaving dead silence behind. I nodded once to my former colleagues, then walked out too, ignoring Brian calling for me to come back. Outside, the Chicago air felt different, lighter. Go figure. I had no job, no immediate prospects, and had just watched my biggest professional achievement crumble. But honestly, I felt relieved. My phone buzzed constantly as I walked to the parking garage. I turned it off. Whatever crisis was happening back there wasn't mine to solve anymore. At home, I poured myself a scotch, then sat on my balcony. Actually watched the sunset. When's the last time I did that? When's the last time I'd been home before dark? That evening, news alerts popped up on my tablet. Our company's stock had dropped 28% on rumors the merger collapsed. By morning, it would drop another 12%. Thousands of jobs were hanging in the balance. The company I'd worked so hard to save was now in free fall. Part of me felt guilty. Good people would suffer. But I hadn't failed them. Their leadership had. For the next week, I ignored calls and messages. Colleagues, journalists, recruiters, Everyone wanted to know what happened and what I'd do next. I wasn't ready to answer. Instead, I slept. I cooked real meals instead of eating takeout at my desk. I reconnected with friends I'd barely seen in 3 years. "I've never seen you this relaxed," my brother Jordan said during a video call. "Getting fired might be the best thing that ever happened to you." "Maybe," I admitted, "but I still can't believe how it ended." 3 years of my life, Jordan. 3 years sacrificing everything to save that company. "And what did they sacrifice for you?" he asked. "Nothing. You gave them everything. And the first time this Ashley person flexed her power, they let her destroy you." He wasn't wrong. 2 weeks later, Brian finally caught me on my phone. I almost declined the call, but curiosity won out. "Andrew," he sounded exhausted. "We need to talk. I'm listening. The board wants to meet with you. The situation here is—" He paused. "It's worse than we anticipated. We need your help." "To do what exactly? To fix this? To bring Daniel back to the table? To save the company? The same company that fired me for not wearing a jacket?" His sigh was heavy with regret. "That was a terrible mistake. Ashley has been removed from her position. I've been reprimanded." I said nothing. "Please, Andrew, thousands of jobs are at stake. People who worked alongside you, who respect you. People who sat silently while I was humiliated," I thought. But I kept that to myself. "What's your offer?" I asked instead. "Come to the board meeting tomorrow. Name your terms." I considered hanging up, but something inside me, the part that had spent 3 years trying to save this company, couldn't quite let go. "I'll think about it," I said, ending the call. That night, I couldn't sleep. What did I actually want? Reinstatement? A public apology? Revenge? "Yeah," a voice inside me whispered. "All of that." By morning, I had my answer. I called Brian back. "I'll meet with the board today, not tomorrow, and I'll come with conditions." 4 hours later, I walked into the boardroom wearing the exact same outfit I'd been fired in. No suit jacket. The message wasn't subtle, but then subtlety hadn't worked for me before. The board members stood when I entered. Their expressions ranged from desperate hope to embarrassed discomfort. Brian looked like he hadn't slept in days. Ashley was nowhere to be seen. "Thank you for coming, Andrew," the chairman said. "We appreciate your willingness to discuss the situation." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I replied, taking a seat. "In the 2 weeks since I left, your stock has fallen 52%. 3 major clients have announced they're reviewing their contracts. The business press is running daily speculation about when you'll file for bankruptcy." Grim nods around the table. "You've lost the Pinnacle merger, which was your last real chance at survival. Even if I could convince Daniel to reconsider, and that's a big if, the terms would be much worse now." "We understand that," Brian said. "But we have to try something." "Why should I help you?" I asked. "You sat silent while your daughter fired me on a whim." "None of you." I looked around the table, meeting each eye. Spoke up for me or the work I'd done. Uncomfortable shifting in seats. "We made a terrible mistake," the chairman admitted. "What would it take for you to return?" I opened my bag and withdrew a folder. "These terms are non-negotiable." I placed it before him, watching as he flipped it open. Inside was a 3-page document my attorney had drafted overnight. The chairman's eyebrows rose as he read. He passed it to Brian, whose face went pale. "This is extensive," Brian said. "Yes. It includes full reinstatement at triple my previous salary, a seat on the board, complete autonomy over strategy, and a substantial equity stake in the company. Also, there's this clause about new ventures. Any new business initiative I develop while employed here remains 60% my personal property," the chairman read aloud. "The company may claim 40% ownership, but I retain controlling interest. That's highly unusual. So is firing your CFO over a dress code on the day of a $2.8 billion merger signing," I replied evenly. "Consider it insurance against future misunderstandings." They looked at each other, silent conversation passing between them. Finally, the chairman spoke. "And if we agree to these terms, you'll try to bring Pinnacle back?" "I'll try. I can't promise success." Another exchange of glances. Then the chairman pushed the contract back to me, now bearing his signature. Done. One by one, the other board members signed. Brian was last, his pen hovering briefly before he added his name. "When can you start?" the chairman asked. I already have, I said, standing up. I'll be in my office making calls. I suggest you all prepare for a very difficult few months. As I turned to leave, Brian called after me. What about Ashley? I paused at the door. What about her? She's still with the company, in a junior role in the marketing department. Will that be a problem? I smiled thinly. Not for me. That night, I called Daniel. The conversation was long and difficult. As I'd predicted, he was reluctant to re-engage. Your company showed its true colors, he said. Why would I trust them again? You wouldn't be trusting them, I replied. You'd be trusting me, and I now have the authority to guarantee what I promise. After 2 hours, he agreed to consider a revised proposal with significantly less favorable terms for my company. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. Over the next few weeks, I worked relentlessly to stabilize what could be saved. Many departments had to be restructured. Some people lost their jobs, none of whom had been in that conference room when I was fired. I saw Ashley occasionally in the hallways. She always looked away quickly. I never approached her or mentioned her name in meetings. Her presence or absence meant nothing to me, or so I told myself. But an idea had begun forming in my mind from the very first day of my return. That unusual clause in my contract, the one giving me majority ownership of new ventures, hadn't been random. I had a plan, one that would take time and patience. It began with a conversation with Chloe Anderson, our head of business development. I need a side project, I told her over lunch one day. Something small, experimental. Can your team help? Chloe, delighted that I'd singled her out, agreed immediately. What kind of project? I've been thinking about executive consulting, specifically helping companies navigate complex M&A transactions. She looked surprised. That's not exactly a huge leap from what we already do. No, I agreed. But it's an area where we could build something independent, and my contract allows for exploration of new verticals. Within days, Chloe had assembled a small team. We worked evenings and weekends conducting research, developing methodologies, identifying target markets. I was particularly interested in helping mid-sized companies prepare for major acquisitions, companies that couldn't afford the big consulting firms but needed serious expertise. Why focus on the smaller deals? One team member asked. The big companies pay more. Because that's where the real need is, I explained. And smaller companies appreciate genuine partnership more than the Fortune 500s do. The team embraced the challenge with enthusiasm. They saw it as a creative outlet from their regular work, a fun project with a leader who actually knew what he was talking about. Meanwhile, I continued rebuilding relationships with key clients and slowly, painfully, reconstructing a viable merger plan with Pinnacle. The company remained in danger, but the immediate threat of bankruptcy receded. Brian watched my work with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. He knew I'd saved his job for now, but also sensed that I wasn't quite the same person who had left that day with a box of belongings. "You've changed," he said one evening as we reviewed quarterly projections. "Have I? You're harder somehow, more distant." I smiled. Getting fired in front of 21 silent colleagues tends to adjust your perspective. He winced. "I've apologized for that." "Yes, you have. Several times. And I've accepted your apology, but accepting isn't forgetting." As weeks turned to months, our consulting project progressed from concept to reality. We partnered with a small office facility to establish Sullivan Advisory Group, funded through my personal resources with company resources properly compensated as outlined in my contract. Our approach was straightforward, practical, and effective. We focused on real-world solutions rather than theoretical frameworks. Each client got personal attention from someone who had actually closed billion-dollar deals. I began taking meetings with potential clients during lunch hours and after work. Small manufacturing companies, regional banks, family businesses considering succession plans. No one at my day job commented, but I noticed people watching. Then came our first major success. A regional healthcare company hired us to advise on a $180 million acquisition. The deal closed smoothly, both sides happy, and word spread quickly through professional networks. More clients followed. A logistics company, a software firm, 2 manufacturing businesses. Each success built our reputation and confirmed what I already suspected. There was genuine demand for experienced, practical M&A advice. 6 months after my return, Sullivan Advisory Group was ready for a major announcement. We had a growing client list, proven results, and a team eager to expand. The day before our official launch, I called a company-wide meeting. Everyone attended, curious about the unusual summons. As I walked to the front of the room, I noted with satisfaction that Ashley was present, sitting in the back row, trying to blend into the wall. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Today marks an important milestone for our company. We've weathered a difficult period, stabilized our core business, and are finally ready to announce something new." Brian, sitting in the front row, looked confused. This wasn't on his agenda. For the past 6 months, a small team has been working on a special project, one that represents not just a new revenue stream, but a new direction for our company's future. I clicked to display the first slide, Sullivan Advisory Group's logo, clean and professional. I'm proud to introduce Sullivan Advisory Group, executive consulting designed to help mid-sized companies navigate complex transactions and strategic decisions. Murmurs swept through the room as I clicked to the next slide, showing our client list and results. "These aren't just consulting contracts," I continued. "They're partnerships. Every engagement addresses a specific challenge that smaller companies face when competing with larger organizations." I walked toward the center of the stage, straightening my tie. No jacket, as always now. Take our healthcare client. They needed to acquire a competitor but didn't have the internal expertise to structure the deal properly. We provided hands-on guidance throughout the entire process. Result? Successful acquisition, happy shareholders, preserved jobs. I demonstrated our value proposition, showing how personal attention and real experience delivered better outcomes than generic consulting approaches. Brian shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Several board members exchanged glances. In the back, Ashley stared with wide eyes, recognition dawning on her face. "You might be wondering why a financial services company is launching a consulting arm." I smiled. "The answer is simple. We identified a market need and created an innovative solution, exactly what we do with our core business." I advanced to the next slide, showing projected revenue figures that made several executives sit up straighter. Our market research indicates significant demand for experienced M&A consulting. We've secured key clients, built a proven methodology, and created a growth strategy that leverages authentic expertise. I paused, meeting Ashley's eyes across the room. Every Sullivan Advisory engagement will include documentation explaining its inspiration. The story of how arbitrary judgment and poor leadership nearly destroyed a company's most valuable deal. The room went completely silent. No one looked at Ashley, but everyone knew who I was talking about. That incident revealed something important. When professional capability is subordinated to superficial standards, everyone loses. Sullivan Advisory offers practical solutions to that problem. I clicked to the final slide showing our expansion plans. Thanks to my employment contract, which grants me controlling interest in any new ventures I develop, Sullivan Advisory will operate as an independent entity with 40% ownership by this company. All resources used in development have been properly compensated, and all financial arrangements are documented thoroughly. Brian stood up. "Andrew, this is the first I'm hearing about launching tomorrow. The board should discuss timing." "The board approved my contract, which gives me autonomy over this venture," I interrupted smoothly. "The timing isn't negotiable, but I welcome your support." I turned back to the audience. This isn't just about consulting. It's about recognizing that true professionalism comes from competence, experience, and results, not from adherence to arbitrary rules created to control rather than empower. With that, I thanked everyone and ended the meeting, ignoring the buzz of conversation that erupted. As people filed out, I noticed Ashley remained seated, staring at the now blank screen. I walked past her without acknowledgement. My point had been made. The launch exceeded all projections. Business publications covered our methodology, but also highlighted the origin story. "Fired over dress code, CFO builds $1 million consulting firm," read one headline. New clients contacted us immediately, many specifically mentioning they appreciated working with someone who valued substance over appearance. Mid-sized companies across industries responded to both our practical approach and the message behind it. 2 weeks after launch, our website crashed from traffic when Daniel Foster gave an interview mentioning Sullivan Advisory. "I use them now for due diligence on smaller deals," he told the reporter. "Best practical advice I've encountered, and I appreciate supporting someone who values competence over conformity." The interview went viral in financial circles. Inquiries doubled, then tripled. Brian called me to his office the day after the interview published. This is bigger than we anticipated, he said, gesturing to the revenue reports before him. Yes, I agreed. The board is concerned about focus. They worry Sullivan Advisory is distracting you from our core business. Our core business is stabilized. The revised merger terms are progressing. My work here remains exemplary. He sighed. That's not the real concern, is it? I waited. The story behind Sullivan Advisory. It's making us look bad, making Ashley look bad. The story is factual. It's damaging. Sometimes truth is, I replied. He leaned forward. What do you want, Andrew? To humiliate my daughter forever? To remind everyone constantly of our mistake? I considered the question carefully. What I want, I said finally, is for actions to have consequences. Real ones. When Ashley fired me, she did so believing there would be no meaningful consequence for her. You sat silent, believing the same. The board did nothing because they assumed hierarchies would protect everyone except me. I stood up. Sullivan Advisory isn't about humiliation. It's about transformation. Taking something destructive and creating value from it. That's a lesson worth teaching. I left him considering my words. 3 months after launch, Sullivan Advisory had become a phenomenon in mid-market M&A. We expanded into strategic planning, succession consulting, and crisis management. Each service maintained our core philosophy of practical expertise over theoretical frameworks. Our financial results were undeniable. Sullivan Advisory generated more revenue in its first quarter than our original company's core business had in the previous year. The 40% ownership stake had become the company's most valuable asset. Meanwhile, the renegotiated merger with Pinnacle finally closed at terms far less favorable than the original deal, but sufficient to ensure survival. Daniel made his continued involvement conditional on my leadership role, a point he made clear to everyone. On the 1-year anniversary of my firing and return, I called another company meeting. The atmosphere was entirely different this time. Excitement rather than confusion. I took the stage wearing a Sullivan Advisory polo shirt, casual but professional. 1 year ago, I was fired from this company for not wearing a jacket, I began. Today, I want to talk about growth, not just in revenue, but in understanding. I gestured toward the charts displaying Sullivan Advisory's remarkable trajectory. Our consulting firm began as a response to arbitrary judgment. It has become something more, a business celebrating competence over compliance. Brian watched from the front row, expression unreadable. Today, I'm announcing 2 things. First, Sullivan Advisory will become fully independent effective next month. This company will retain its 40% ownership stake, providing substantial ongoing revenue without management responsibility. Applause broke out. The financial benefits were obvious to everyone. Second, I continued when the room quieted. I've established a mentorship program funded by Sullivan Advisory profits. The Executive Development Initiative will provide guidance to professionals facing workplace challenges. Its first program will be named after this company, acknowledging that sometimes our greatest lessons come from our most difficult experiences. I paused, finding Ashley in the audience. She no longer hid in the back, but sat in the middle rows, diminished but present. I've been asked many times if Sullivan Advisory was created for revenge. The answer is more complicated than yes or no. It was created because someone tried to reduce my professional worth to a dress code violation, and I refused to accept that evaluation. I walked to the edge of the stage. The mentorship program will include a unique opportunity, a fellowship for individuals who've made significant professional mistakes and demonstrated genuine growth afterward. The first fellowship is currently open for applications. Ashley's eyes widened slightly. Mistakes can define us, or they can transform us. The choice belongs to each of us. After the meeting, Ashley approached me for the first time since that day a year ago. The fellowship program, she said quietly. Is it real? Everything I do is real, I replied. She nodded, swallowing visibly. And would I be eligible? I studied her. The entitlement that had radiated from her a year ago had dimmed considerably. 12 months in a junior role, watching the consequences of her actions unfold publicly, had changed something fundamental. The application process is rigorous, I said. It requires comprehensive self-assessment and a detailed growth plan. No special treatment. I understand, she said. I need to do something different. Be someone different. I handed her my card. The details are on our website. Applications close in 2 weeks. 2 months later, the separation of Sullivan Advisory became official. I remained involved with the original company as a board member and strategic advisor, but my primary focus shifted to building the consulting practice and mentorship program. Ashley did apply for the fellowship. Her application was neither the strongest nor the weakest. The selection committee, which I deliberately removed myself from, ultimately awarded her an alternate position, not a full fellowship, but an acknowledgement of potential growth. When she received the news, she sent me a single message. "Thank you for the opportunity to be more than my worst moment." I didn't reply, but I kept the message. The original company never fully recovered its former market position, but it stabilized as a smaller, more focused entity. Brian eventually stepped down, acknowledging that new leadership was needed. Sullivan Advisory grew beyond anything I had initially imagined. What began as a response to humiliation evolved into an enterprise that helped hundreds of companies navigate their most important decisions without compromising their values or capabilities. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't in Ashley's diminishment or the company's struggle. It was in my transformation of a moment meant to shame me into a movement that elevated others. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone who tries to make you smaller is to grow so large they can't help but stand in your shadow. And that shadow, I discovered, could either darken or enlighten depending on how you cast it. That's the thing about getting knocked down. You can either stay down or build something bigger than what they took from you. I chose bigger. Maybe that helps if you're going through something similar. The best revenge really is just proving them wrong.